Hello everybody, welcome back to Just Keep Parenting. Glad to have you join us today to listen in a bit and reflect a little bit about parenting and our relationships with others. Today we're going to be talking more from the book of Easy to Love, Difficult to Discipline, right, from Conscious Discipline and Dr. Becky Bailey. And we've been taking a few pages each week of this book. I've heard back from some of you that you're actually listening to the audiobook or you're actually listening to the book, which is great. If you don't have time for that right now, tune in to Just Keep Parenting, and we'll help you along that journey. But today we're going to talk about the passive aggressive flip-flop. We've been talking about assertiveness and how can we build assertiveness in our relationships, and especially with our children, right? The children that we have contact with. And one of the things that Dr. Becky Bailey talks a lot about is, one of our constant moments, and not just her, but even here at the school, one of our constant struggles is teaching children that words are more powerful than hitting and kicking, right? But unfortunately, because they have a brainstem, sometimes that's where they go, right? And if that's been modeled for them, then that's where they'll go, all right? And so as we work with children, we need to find and be comfortable with our assertive voices, right? One of the things that we work on with the children is, as we talk about, we don't call it bullying defense, but we talk about how when somebody is doing something to you that you don't like, to be able to look them in the eye, because we know that eye contact takes away the power from the bully. And so if we look them in the eye and we say, I don't like it when you hit me in the back. Please don't do that anymore, right? That they can do that looking down, and the power behind it is not nearly, the power increases when I look at them in their eyes and do it. But it's also very scary for most people to do that. And so one of the things we work with the children a lot is being able to say, well, if they come and say, well, so-and-so hit me. Well, did you tell them? Did you look at them in the eye and tell them you didn't know? Well, do you want me to help you? Well, we can practice and we can go talk about that, right? So helping them to be comfortable, right? That's the issue. It's not just finding our assertive voices, but helping them to have muscle memory that helps us feel comfortable having those conversations. And truly, as adults, I deal with this with my university students. We're doing midterm interviews right now. And one of the things that they say is, I don't want to be confrontational, right? They think that having an assertive voice is confrontational, based on their nurturing, right, as they've been brought up. And so, unfortunately, most of us use a passive position when we talk to children. And as we use that passive voice or that passive position, we sound like this. Come on, sweetie, it's time to go to grandma's house. And they're playing a game or doing something on their bed, right? And they act as if they didn't even hear us. And maybe they were ignoring us, but the nonverbal is, I'm ignoring you, I didn't hear you, right? And so we might perceive it as disobedience, right? Which it isn't. It really is the way that we told it to them. Are you ready to go to grandma's house, right? They may not want to go to grandma's house. They may not want to say that, right? But we kind of gave them a choice. Are you ready to go to grandma's house? Come on, sweetie, let's go, right? But if it's an expectation, it's like, come on, buddy, it's time to go to grandma's house. I'll meet you out front in a couple minutes. Get your shoes on, and I'll put my shoes on, and we'll meet you out front, right? There's a difference in that assertive voice versus the passive voice. So sometimes after we start with the passive position, they ignore us, act like they don't hear us, right? Then we switch to aggressive. So we go from passive to aggressive. And we say to them in an aggressive voice, listen to me, if you want to play your game, then you better start moving, buddy, right? And so all of a sudden the kid's like, holy cow, right? She's serious, when before I didn't hear that seriousness in her voice, right? And so we've got to be able to to be able to be assertive, which is that middle point, right? It's not confrontational like some of my students feel it is, but it may feel confrontational if they haven't been around somebody who is typically uses an assertive position. So after we've asserted our aggressiveness, right, we often feel guilty. Oh, I shouldn't have said that to them. It's kind of mean of me to be so aggressive with them. So then we flip back to the passive voice and we're like, you know what, honey, I sure appreciate you coming to grandma's house with me. You think about what you want to do afterwards. We'll stop at the store, buy you whatever you want, or we'll get some ice cream, right? So we just flip. We've gone passive, aggressive, back to passive again. So we've got to figure out, we're digging ourselves into these holes, right? And we've got to figure out that, man, I need some assertiveness training, because I don't want to feel guilty every time I flip, but I don't know how to do that without flipping, right? And so one of the things that Becky talks about are blocks to assertiveness, right? And so the hard part is that we need to express our thoughts and feelings and wishes without diminishing those in others. That's where some of my students think it's confrontational, right? Because if they're going to assert themselves, then asserting themselves means that one of us has to fall back, right? And assertiveness does not mean that, right? Because we're not diminishing their thoughts and their feelings. We're just recognizing that we both have thoughts and feelings and wishes, right? It really does sound simple, but clearly it's not, else we would be doing it more, right? So we state ours, and they feel entitled to state theirs as well, right? So we have to value ourselves. I was visiting with a friend, and we were kind of talking about the difficulties that we have with family members or with friends that sometimes we feel take advantage of us, right? And one of my past videos talks about, we train people to treat us certain ways, right? And so if we don't want them to treat us that way, then that's up to us to use our assertive voice to have them not treat us that way anymore. And so we have to value ourselves, right? If we don't want people to treat us that way, then we have to learn to value ourselves. When we don't value ourselves, we tend to let people walk all over us, right? So we have to shift the focus from what you assume others are thinking and feeling to consciousness of our own mind's content, right? What's happening? What's happening inside of me, right? Not what are they feeling? Well, I bet she's not wanting to talk to me today because of this and this and this. No, right? What am I feeling, right? If you're feeling that, then we need to be able to value ourselves and say, you know what? I just need to call her. Right? And being able to say, I'm feeling this today, feeling upset, I'm feeling depressed. Do you have 10 minutes that we can visit? Right? So becoming cognizant of, and she calls it consciousness, right? Of our own mind's content, and not assuming what somebody else is thinking. So we're not born with assertiveness. We're not blessed with assertiveness. It is a learned skill, right? It's a learned behavior, just like passivity and aggression, right? So in order to learn it, we have to do three things. The first thing we have to do is achieve self-awareness, which is what we just talked about, right? How do you interact with your children? Are you passive? Are you aggressive? Or do you flip-flop? Some of you may be assertive already, right? But we've got to become aware of what we're doing in the moment. Am I being passive? Am I being aggressive? Am I flipping? Right? So that's self-awareness piece. The second thing is we have to monitor our own thought patterns, right? As you talk to yourself, we've talked about thought patterns in the past, right? What are you saying to yourself? What are you thinking? Do you use the power of attention, right? If you don't know what that is, go look it up in a past video. But do you focus on what you want or what you haven't done? That's the power of attention, right? Focusing on what we want to have done rather than what we don't have. And how do you address yourself, right? Are you passive with yourself? Are you aggressive with yourself? Or do you talk to yourself more assertively, right? If you do that, if you can talk to yourself more assertively in your self-talk, you'll be able to do that more with your children. And then the third thing, my friends, is to teach and utilize assertiveness in all our relationships, not just with children, but with all of those relationships, right? As we become more assertive in our relationships with others, we model it for our children, right? I think it was 2 weeks ago we had a video about how do we help our children do what we say rather than do what we do, right? We have to change that. We want to be able to have them do what we do. Unfortunately, that is harder than it sounds, right? So look that one up if you want to go back and have a 10-minute rewind on that. And so when your child comes up to say, hey, Emily pushed me, or he's looking at me funny, right? Then we're going to have the skills to be able to give them the alternative words to use for that, right? To help them work through that so that it's not about what somebody is doing to us. Because when we do that, we give them our power, right? So we have to look inside and say, yeah, I didn't like it when Emily pushed me. So let me go talk to her and say, Emily, I don't like it when you pushed me, right? If you want to play with me, this is what you can say, but I don't like to be pushed. And if we can do that, we can help our children not be bullied. Well, we probably won't help them not be bullied, but we'll give them skills and tools and resources that they can use right here in their voice so that when they are bullied, that they can counteract that. And that's that's what we need to be doing as we talk about how to help each other live in a peaceful world, right? To be more assertive and not so passive and aggressive. So think about yourself, think about your self-awareness this week. When do you find yourself being aggressive? When do you find yourself being passive, or are you flipping? And seek that middle ground of being assertive. Thanks for joining. Pass it along to anybody that you might know that could benefit from some of this. Just a time for us to get together and think about how to be better humans, how to be better adults, and how to be better parents. Thanks, everybody, for joining.